This will be a quick tour of some of the interesting river landforms that you can see on Google Earth. Before I get started, I just wanted to point out to you the fall line cities of the eastern part of the United States. This area right here is known as the Piedmont and is geologically different from the coastal plain here. Where rivers fall off of the Piedmont, like the Potomac River or the James River or others, you get this line of fall where those rivers are falling, and cities tend to form along that area because that was a natural place where canals or boats were moving upriver to have to stop to break their load to move it into some other form of transportation. The first landform that I just want to show you is in the so-called Great Valley. The Great Valley is the large valley that separates the Blue Ridge Mountains, shown here, from the Ridge and Valley over here. There's that Great Valley. It's composed largely of limestone, and it's got some really interesting entrenched meanders in it. So let's go down specifically to the Shenandoah part of that valley. Here we are looking down the Shenandoah, and you can already start to see these entrenched meanders here. You get a really good view of them right here. These rivers were meandering, the area was uplifted tectonically, those meanders stayed in place but sort of dug their way down into the limestone. Very interesting. From here we're going to go over and look at the Mississippi River. And in the Mississippi River, we're going to take a quick look at the broad floodplain. And you can see the Mississippi River has created this big flat area in the middle, sometimes known as the Mississippi Delta, even though the true delta of the Mississippi is further to the south. Let's take a look at that floodplain. And we already saw some diagrams in the PowerPoint and in the text that showed things like meander and meander scars and oxbows. You can see all these things in place here. Pull out just a little bit to really be able to see those features again. Very intriguing features all throughout this area. Another thing that you can see here as well is you can see the Yazoo River flowing through Yazoo City as one of those Yazoo streams that was described in the lecture and in the book as well. From here, let's go down and look at the lower part of the Mississippi. We're going to be flying down into this area, specifically into Thibodaux. Thibodaux has a lot of great levees in it, and also back swamps as well. This is the Bayou La Fourche. The Bayou La Fourche regularly floods, and when it floods, the materials that are deposited by the flood tend to be along the banks of the river. And that's why towns and villages seem to hug the banks of these large rivers rather than being away from them. Even though, of course, they flood first, they're actually higher and they dry out first. The waters eventually collect back in the back swamps, and you can see these back swamp areas here in between the rivers where you tend to have a lot of nasty clay material, swampy conditions, not a good place to live. You can see this as well in New Orleans. New Orleans is built right along the banks of the Mississippi, especially the older parts of the city. And that's because they were taking advantage of those natural levees. It's also one of the reasons why some of the fancier, tomier neighborhoods, which were located near the river, didn't flood as badly during Hurricane Katrina as the areas in the back swamp area, which are actually below sea level in New Orleans. From here, let's take a look at the Bird's Foot Delta of the Mississippi River. It's not a classic arc delta like the Nile River, but you can see as the river flows down through here, it produces this really interesting feature where the river is going into the Gulf of Mexico. Its passage is blocked periodically, and that causes it to move to another place, creating this delta formation, which we can see a little bit better as we zoom in here a bit. Here are the distributaries, as they're called in a delta, the streams that distribute water, the opposite of tributaries. And another little view of it. And then the very last feature I wanted to show you is not really a river feature, but it's a desert landform feature. We're going to fly all the way to Death Valley. And from Death Valley, we're going to zoom into one particular wash, which is a name for a stream that's dry unless it happens to rain, and then it fills up with water, as we talked about before. Probably water comes out of this wash only when the snows are melting, maybe a couple times during the year if there's some sort of thunderstorm. As a result of that, the feature that is created by this wash is a broad alluvial fan. And there you can really see the fan-like shape of the water that comes out of the wash. When we start to link a bunch of alluvial fans together in one of those Bolson areas in a graben that we talked about before, you get a big feature called a bajada, where you essentially have rolling features caused by alluvial fans that join up with one another. And here is this in just a little bit more detail, and you can see it sort of from the side. Now eventually the valley flattens out, and where it does, you get a playa, as it's called, a big flat area, oftentimes sort of a area that's got a lot of sediments in it, salty material. Water collects down here and then evaporates and leaves behind this feature. And then since we're in the desert area, we'll just take a look at one last feature, which is really more of an erosional feature, but it's a badland area. Oftentimes streams in desert areas don't flow through one channel, but many, and they form these very interesting landscapes that are created by what are called rills, as opposed to stream forms, and we get this area that's called a badland.